Uh, Sir explained the very significant or very insightful manner. And theory, of course, it changes in science is simply a matter of preferring the better, more precise, more versatile tool. So again, sir used many theories like Kingsley Davis, Malthus, Karl Marx, Augsburg. Like these all theories are very significant in terms of making you a sense of reality, even you are not having experience of that reality, right? So you can read many monographs, anthropological monographs, and you can understand the existential reality of that particular field. So again, theory is really a very important thing in uh, that terms. uh, Again, the second lecture, uh, second part of this lecture is about logic, right? Philosophically, logic is very sound concept. Even Plato argued for deductive thinking, and inductive thinking. When Plato states like deductive thinking, starting with the theory to make sense of what we observe. Uh, 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 Aristotle, his student, uh, was uh, more interested in inductive thinking. It states like starting with observations in order to build theories. Uh, but if you read the text on logic, uh, that is written by Karl Popper, uh, The Logic of Scientific Discovery, where he formulated a combination of deductive and inductive thinking in hypothetic-deductive method, commonly known as the scientific method. Uh, both the significance of field and the significance of theories, both are important in terms of generating the theories. Uh, Whether we talk about qualitative study, which is largely uh, determined by inductive reasoning, if we talk about uh, quantitative aspect of research, which is largely determined by uh, say theoretical framework. So both are important in terms of generating the good and the sound research. So I want sir to discuss on what is the significance of logic in terms of deducing the theories. Particularly if you can put the idea of say uh, R.K. Mertens, and again there is a thinker called Estimator who also emphasized on the logic of the significance of logic in terms of reducing the hypothesis. He again talked about the notion of serendipity in research, like we have two component of logic uh, we use in research. One is logic of discovery, which comes from the field, and the logic of proof, which comes from the theory. And this man called Schemiter, talks about how research begins with ideas. Then we have a particular topic to discuss and research, and when we conceptualize that topic we have two dimensions to go forward. One is normative clarification, another one is hypothetic generating. Then we have case selection, then we have variables of operationalization, then we measure and uh, the indicator can subsequently be test, the causal inferences, self-assessment, and we again come to the very foundational and fundamental element of theory, that is idea. So we have this logic of development. So in that context, sir, if you can uh, uh, emphasize on this notion of serendipity in your lecture, that would be more uh, insightful and interesting. So come to the starting point, that is ideas. So how in this process, how logic plays a very significant role, whether we should approach from the field or from the theories. This is the demarcation line of, say, quantitative and qualitative research, and in other words, inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. So I'm going to over to you, sir. So kindly deliver on this topic, significance of
You see, this is the other component of what we want to discuss today. First discussion, first part of my discussion with you dealt with what theory is and what is fact, in what manner they are linked. I'll give you in due course of time very concrete example from Durkheim, because you are all social scientists. Durkheim's study of suicide, in the kind of study which he himself conducted inductively in order to prove his hypothetical statement, which emerged as a theory of suicide. It is a well-established theory of suicide, and that theory developed by him has discarded or has rejected the theories formulated by psychologists of the occurrence of suicide. And this can be applied also in the study of the suicide committed by the farmers in India and the suicide committed by the cultural personalities, and we may find that the suicide is committed by them because of the factors within, right? When we give focus on the factors within, we are very near to psychology. When we focus on the factors outside, we are very near to sociology and other disciplines. Now, Professor Randhir has said that now I should focus on different systems of logic. You know, different systems of logic are not different than what I have just now explained to you. You know, logical arguments emerge or stem from theory and far from fact. What is theory and what is fact? Fact is the empirical reality, which is a very verifiable reality. Theory is a verified empirically truth, verified empirically, a statement empirically verified. Now, theory becomes a deductive system. When theory comes into being, theory becomes a system of systems. Theory doesn't end here, that we have explained the functions of theory, matter is over, right? Or we have explained the notion of concept and the functions of concept, function notion of fact and the functions of fact, matter is over. Matter is not over, because these two basic components, interlinked components of science, science cannot exist in case there is no fact which can be verified. Empirically verifiable, empirically verifiable facts are not there, and science cannot exist in case there is no empirically verified facts theory. So one takes the place of deduction, the other takes the place of induction, right? So the fact becomes a source of inductive logic, and theory becomes the source of deductive logic, right? These are There are other logical systems also, but mostly in present day researches, these two logical systems are applied: deductive on the one hand and inductive on the other either. Now whatever we have explained, they provide a background to study deductive logic and to study the inductive logic. It is very simple. Now our task has become very simple to explain these two systems of logic, because we have explained the basic structure of these two logical systems, that is theory and fact. Now the question here, and the way theory and fact are interlinked, in the same manner, deductive and inductive logical systems are interlinked. We cannot separate the two. But as soon as we separate the two, we are nowhere. That is the most difficult task. That is the problem which we are facing. Now the scholars have uh, 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 separated these two logical systems. They have separated theory as a deductive logic, and they have separated fact as the inductive logic. They cannot separate the two, right? They cannot work without it. Otherwise, what is happening today? Research findings look like, if we read a book, if you read a research report, you may find that the research reports look like the skeleton of fact which I have explained to you, verified facts. A research report looks like the skeleton of verified facts, and that skeleton contains verified facts, but it is without flesh, right? It is without flesh. It is like our body, but that our skeleton cannot survive unless flesh is there. And that is the role of theory. Theory works like a flesh, gives strength to the skeleton of facts. That is the both are very closely interlinked. That's why I said in the beginning, the close interaction between theory and fact. So is the case with the close interaction between deductive logic and inductive logic. Now, how we can apply deductive logic? How we can apply inductive logic? In what context we can apply inductive logic? In what context we can apply deductive logic? Which one is qualitatively better? Both are qualitatively good, provided we learn how to apply them. Provided we learn how to apply them, and we do not make our researches purely inductive, purely narrative, purely qualitative, purely survey type, purely survey of opinion, purely survey of facts, purely fact finding type. Most of the researches today are fact finding type. Fact fact finding type means facts are empirically verified, and then facts are brought into the report, and then the report is prepared on the basis of fact collected. For example, they may ask the question, how many caste categories are there in a village, right? They may ask the question, how many villagers are there in a village. They may ask the question, how many villagers are there who belong to different ethnic groups. How many villages are there who belong to different caste categories? How many villages are there who are from the upper caste, from the lower caste, and from the middle caste? How many villages are there who belong to different class categories? How many villagers are there who belong to different family composition, that their composition varies from each other? These are all very nebulous and general questions. Fact finding type, we are finding the facts from the village and then bring those facts. Accordingly, tabulation is done. Facts are arranged, facts are tabulated, and they are explained, and the report is completed. Right? So this is a fact finding type report. Most of the research reports today are fact finding type, more inductive type, and the most common inductive is the analytic, which if you read any dictionary, you may find analytic induction, and what is induction? Induction is reverse of deduction. Simple definition. Induction is reverse of deduction, उसके against है. It is against deduction. Induction is reverse of deduction, right? Reverse of it. And induction means what? Induction means uh, formulation of a hypothetical statement on the basis of our observation. We can go to the village and find out what type of village is that, and then we can formulate a hypothesis on the basis of our observation of the existing facts. On the basis of our observation, it has nothing to do with the deduction. It has nothing to do with, forget for the time being the deduction. Induction. Analytic induction is a very common device which is inductive in nature and available in social science research, which is a reverse of deduction. Induction is reverse of deduction because induction begins from particular. Induction begins from particular, moves towards generalization, and deduction begins from generalization, moves towards a special, particular, basic difference, a very general type difference. This has to be explained. When we are moving around in a village, we may see that the demographic size of the villagers varies. Somewhere more children, somewhere less children, right? And therefore, we may find the causal link between the two. Few villages may be taken into account to prove the relationship between to prove the size of the family of the villagers of the village. We can take a case of a village, and we can go there and prepare a questionnaire, or we can schedule our observation. We can observe the situation from the field, and we can come out with this statement that the numerical size of the family, the household, varies from each other. So let us find out the variation in the household. We are not going to make any causal link. We can do that also in the inductive research, but one village can be studied in order to find the numerical variation in the families of the villagers, right? uh, and then we can prepare the schedule can be tested in the field situation. Then also our hypothesis, which is based on our observation, can be retested in order to see whether the hypothesis formulated is fitted into the empirical situation, whether the tools constructed can be workable in the field situation, can be more functional. Maybe some of them may be dysfunctional, functional, maybe of no use, and therefore the tool of construction has to be restructured in the same way in which the hypothetical structure can be redefined depending on the kind of empirical situation which is existing in a particular case, that is village. We can enlarge our universe from one village to two villages, from three villages to four villages, and so on, with the same hypothetical statement that we want to examine the numerical size of the villagers and see whether they vary, and they vary among whom, whether they vary by caste, whether they vary by class, and that will be the second stage of inductive research. We are making analytic induction by making a statement based on our observation of facts. See, nowhere I have mentioned any deductive logic. But if we prove the causal relationship on the basis of our induction logic, if we prove the causal relationship between, say, for example, class factor and the numerical size of the variables, numerical size of the household, we can establish the cause and relationship. As soon as we establish the cause and effect relationship, we can formulate a grounded theory. We can make generalization, and therefore a theoretical statement may be developed on the basis of the kind of empirical facts which are existing there, and on the kind of the empirical facts which have been verified by the researcher. Fact generates theory. So here the assumption is not deduced from a theory. Here assumption is formulated on the basis of our common sense impression of the empirical reality. It has nothing to do with deductive logic. And this is how researches are being conducted today, which are more inductive type, which are more narrative type, which are more survey type, right? Right. Now find out the norms, prepare the table, do the tabulation, and do the analysis of the data, prepare the report, submit the report. It has nothing to do with deductive logic. Now, this is the inductive logic. It starts from a specific village, goes to the element of generalization, empirical generalization. As soon as the causal relationship is established, causal relationship is established, theory originates. Or theoretical type statement originates. In case it has larger empirical generalization and prediction, it becomes a theory. But most of the theoretical statements are theoretical statements. They are not theories, and therefore Martin doesn't talk of the large scale theoretical formulation. He talks in terms of the middle range theoretical. Maybe theory generalization can be based on the basis of 2, 3, 4, 5 villages, so they will apply to them, or they will apply to similar other villages, but cannot they cannot apply to all the villages existing in the country. So the grand empirical generalization cannot be made. It is very difficult, because the empirical situation is varied. It differs from one place to another place, from one region to another region, from one village to another village, and so on. And therefore the degree of empirical generalization of a theory also varies. And therefore we talk of grand theory, we talk of grounded theory, we talk of some kind of empirical generalization on the basis of the inductive logic. Now, this kind of research is superior, or which is based on inductive logic, or the kind of research which is based on deductive logic is superior. Deductive logic is the theory. Now, we are not going to, in the deductive logic, we are not going to the field situation. That will come later. We are not going to the field situation to verify and verify the factual position. We are not going to the field. We are within the lab. We are within the library, exploring the literature and studying the theoretical structures of a particular discipline. What Durkheim did. I'm giving the example of the deductive logic. What Durkheim did, Durkheim applied inductive logic, right? He realized that it is quite possible, on the basis of his own hunch, on the basis of his own observation, that it is quite possible, the way we are thinking, it is quite possible that suicide, as viewed by psychologists, suicide is not conditioned by the factors within, right? This is what he assumed on the basis of his observation, inductive observation, analytic induction, on the basis of his studies, on the basis of his observation, that it is quite possible that a person is committing suicide not because of the unrelieved anxieties which he himself has used. Unrelieved anxieties, tension, stress or stresses. Right? In India also, the villagers are committing suicide. So one can say they have their own personality attributes. This person who is committing suicide may have the typical personality attribute of silence. Most of the time, maybe be silent, thinking within, introvert, and most of the time he or she may be suffering from the anxieties, tension, stress, and so on. Under that condition, person may have no choice except to commit suicide, right? So it is quite logical, and the Durkheim also realized it is quite logical to think of the causal relationship between. It is his theory, well-established theory. I'm not giving my own example. It is a well-established theory which is available in most of the books in sociology, particularly R.K. Martin's book. So, so he made the observation, and then he made the study of the theories formulated by psychologists, and the psychologists have approved, and the theory exists even today, of the causal link between the unrelieved anxieties on the one hand and the suicide committed by the individual. So those who commit suicide, they suffer, or they are subjected to unrelieved anxieties. Those who commit suicide, they are subjected to unrelieved stresses. Those who commit suicide, they are subjected to tension and worries. And therefore, it is quite possible that the farmers who take loan from the bank and are unable to repay the loan, they suffer from tension, burden, and so on. They might commit suicide. So, whether it is the psychological, whether the suicide is a psychological process or it is a social process. Therefore, Durkheim settled down on this, whether the person who is committing suicide is committing because of the psychological factor, or the person is committing the suicide because of the social factor. No, see, then Durkheim is making a departure from a given structure of theoretical knowledge. Given structure of theoretical knowledge is what? Is that suicide is a function of unrelieved anxieties. See, suicide is a function of unrelieved anxieties. It is a well-established theory in psychology. Durkheim posed a Durkheim deduced a proposition from this logic. It is logically proved that there is a logical uh, acceptable correlation between the unrelieved anxiety on the one hand and suicide. There is a logical link between the two, so that those who commit suicide, they are subjected to unrelieved anxieties. It is already proved. it is already proved. But from this, Durkheim deduced a proof. Therefore it is called as deductive logic. Means Durkheim did not formulate a hypothesis on the basis of inductive logic. He went to the empirical situation in order to prove it or disprove it. But his uh, hypothesis was, or assumption or proposition was deduced from a given structure of knowledge, given structure, theoretical structure. And what was theoretical structure? Theoretical structure was that suicide is a phenomenon which is regulated by the factors within. It is my own creation. And therefore, if XYZ commits suicide in the Hollywood, are those who are heroes and heroines, it is their own creation. It is because they are confronted, or it is because they are subjected to anxieties, tension, stresses which are unrelieved, not relieved. It means he assumed that in case they are subjected to the anxieties which are unrelieved, they commit suicide. They commit suicide because the anxieties are unrelieved. And therefore, it is from this point his argument begins. Suppose anxieties are relieved, person will not commit suicide. Person is committing suicide because the anxieties are unrelieved. And therefore, he says that if the anxieties are relieved, the person will not commit suicide. Now, what are the sources? Then he started thinking in terms of the factor external to the individual. Factors external to the individual, which are responsible for the occurrence of suicide, and therefore he replaced one theory by his own theory of suicide. Right? Psychological causation of crime as a theory. Psychological causation of crime as a theory was replaced by sociological causation of crime, where he says that the structure of the family tradition, the network within the family, the number of persons living within the family, the interaction within the family, which he has defined, which he has given, for which he has given a different term, which he has called as social cohesiveness. Family is socially cohesive, right? Because now he is trying to identify the factors other than psychological factors. Means he is going beyond psychology. He is coming into the society. And that's why Durkheim again and again says that human behavior is externally constrained. Again and again, very important statement. Durkheim says that human behavior is externally constrained, and therefore it is quite possible that the human behavior of committing suicide is not internally constrained. Now, what is that external factor? External factor is the family, because if I am committing a suicide, I belong to a family. Hmm. And is there any causal link rooted into the structure of the family, which is responsible for the anxieties which are not being unrelieved? कहाँ लोग बात नहीं करते हैं आपस में, they don't interact, they do not talk to each other. Nuclear family in urban areas, nuclear families in rural areas. What is the reason that suicide rate is more in urban areas than in rural areas? or maybe the suicide rate is more in one sector, one sect of religion as compared with the other sect of religion. Why suicide rate was lower among the Catholics as compared with the Protestants? And he says that because of the variation in the social cohesiveness of the family. When the social cohesiveness is low, just listen to me. When the social cohesiveness of the family is low, the degree of anxiety is higher. The rate of suicide is more. Rate of suicide is more when the anxieties remain unrelieved, and anxieties remain unrelieved because it is related with the structure of the family, between the cohesiveness, that's why I said in the beginning, this is the deductive. He has deduced the hypothetical statement from the psychological causation of crime to sociological causation of crime. It is a deduction which needs empirical verification, and therefore he went to the field to collect the fact, to verify his statement, which is not verified. He wanted to test it, empirically verify it, and therefore add it into the existing psychological causation of crime in order to develop a new theory. And therefore Durkheim became Durkheim. Right? Durkheim became Durkheim. Very popular. Now, on the basis of this, further deduction can be made. And then one can go to the field. Now, what happens in the deductive and inductive logic? A scholar directly goes to the field without any connection with the theory, and therefore a scholar fails in producing quality research. Again, I come back to my own statement. Where is the quality? Now, quality research means the research must make a breakthrough into the existing quantum of theoretical knowledge. Research must qualitative research. One characteristic. Qualitative research is a research which must make breakthrough into the existing theoretical structure of knowledge, in the existing theories, and therefore the researcher has to make his or her empirically verifiable statement theoretically deduced. But in order to apply deductive logic, right, a scholar has to, or a scholar is bound to make much and much investment of his or her personal resources. पढ़ना पड़ेगा. One has to read Karl Mannheim, one has to read Durkheim, one has to read R.K. Merton, one has to read other materials theoretically relevant in sociology, and for that investment of personal resources. Now, personal resources means the time, हमारा personal. Time is my personal resource, right? The interest is my personal resource, right? Time, um, time and interest and the effort. Effort is my personal effort. I should make efforts to read Durkheim. I should give time to read Durkheim. I should be interested in reading Durkheim, right? I should give time to read theoretical structure. I should be interested to learn from theories. I should be interested to make efforts to read those theories. But today's scholar is not interested, uh, or maybe we cannot make generalization. Maybe that there is a lack of the investment of personal resources in research. As a result, the the research result is unable to make any breakthrough into the existing quantum of knowledge.
Thanks. Thank you so much, sir. We have incorporated the very important aspect of research, what I call emotional dimension of research, and that is very important as far as the success of a researcher is concerned. And with the illustration of the Durkheimian theory, where you said social cohesiveness, that is, social integration plays a very significant role in terms of determining the cause of the society, which is again the external factor. And you made very excellent point with this illustration, and made us understand about the significance of logic, uh, induction and deduction both. So now I have in chat box some questions. Uh, Smriti, Smriti Kumari is asking, sir, you mentioned in first lecture about the concept of methodology and what methodology stands for. So she is asking a question related
First,
to first lecture about methodology, right? What methodology stands for.
you can see the face also of the person who is raising the question.
No, no, just I can read the question. I can only read the question.
That is the online learning, the problem
online
of the
chat
online
box.
learning.
Yeah, online chat box.
You can see the question, but you cannot see the face of the researcher.
Yeah.
So nobody knows whether the researcher is the same person who is asking the question.
No.
Uh,
So she is asking about the methodology.
what is methodology?
What methodology stands for? Again, good lecture, insightful lecture. Thank you so much, sir. It's a long lecture.
Hmm.
Okay. So we have only one question
Acha.
regarding methodology. So
You see, lecture should also always be long. It should not be short. It should be as long as possible, and it should continue till the conceptual clarity is obtained. This is my answer of a long lecture. Now the second is, what is methodology? And you may, if you are very attentive, what is the name?
Smriti.
Huh?
Smriti Kumar.
Smriti Gupta.
Smriti
Uh,
Kumar.
Smriti, if you are very attentive, in the beginning of my lecture today, although it is a little bit, you are right, longish, and it is better if it is longish, not the short one, because it if it is longish, students will get more and more time to digest it. Unless the lecture is digested and the conceptual clarity is obtained, there is no sense of lecture which is longish, or the lecture which is shorter. Now, so far the concept of methodology is concerned. Last time also in my other lecture I explained this, and of course I borrowed R.K. Martin's definition, and at that time also I requested that there are many books on methodology, but R.K. Martin is the authentic source of methodology. There are two very long chapters in his book on social structure, theory of social structure, two chapters on the role of fact and on the role of theory. Many points which I have explained to you, I have borrowed from R.K. Martin's work, and that is more authentic. It is difficult to challenge the explanations given by R.K. Martin, but that can also be challenged, subject to verification and change. But so far your question, which is concerned with what is methodology. Last time also, if you correctly remember, I explained the notion of methodology, and today also, in the beginning of my lecture, I explained what is methodology, and I explained methodology in the light of what R.K. Martin has explained. R.K. Martin says it is a procedure of undertaking research work. Now, the procedure of undertaking research has a different meaning, but he has his own way of explaining the procedure of undertaking research. Procedure of undertaking research may be purely inductive. Procedure of taking research may be purely deductive, or a procedure of undertaking research may be a combination of both deductive and inductive. But when he says procedure, he is giving greater emphasis on the deductive, on theory, which is source of deducing propositions. Theory which is a source of deducing proposition, and then formulation of the designs and procedures of research. Designs and procedures of research should follow the hypothetical statements deduced from a theory, not directly from the field situation. And that's why I said that deductive application of deductive logic is much more difficult than the inductive logic. Inductive logic, in inductive application of inductive logic, one should not be bothered about the theory, because there is no time at all with the young scholars who will bother to read Durkheim, who is bothered to read Karl Mannheim and other theorists, because it is all a source of headache and tension. Forget about that. It is better go to the village, see what is happening, collect the facts from there, and then bring here in the classroom or in the library, and do the tabulation and analyze the data and prepare the report. Inductive research, and therefore research scholar, so far the procedure of doing research work is concerned, is omitting, or is giving lesser and lesser weightage on the theory. And theory is the most important tool of research. Why? Because it is from the theory, the hypothetical propositions are deduced to be to be tested in order to refute the theory or to reconfirm the theory, and then there will be departure of knowledge, breakthrough in the existing quant of knowledge. There is some finding there also in the inductive design of research. Some facts come into picture so in terms of how many educated people are there, how many illiterate people are there, how many people from the lower caste, how many people from the upper caste, how many people who are landless, how many people who are landless. These are all norms which are collected from the field situation. That is also important, but because it is on the basis of this, causal link can be developed. But the scholar is ignoring the major aspect of the procedure of research, that is the deductive logic, and that is the role of theory. It is the theory from which, if we read, because Durkheim read a lot about the psychological causation of crime, and it is by sitting in his own room he formulated the theory, which he deduced from the existing theory of psychological causation of crime, and assumed. This is his deduced assumption. Assumed from that theory, he assumed that crime is not a function of unrelieved anxiety. This is the hypothesis or assumption or a proposition which is deduced from this theory. Now you see there is a major breakthrough from the psychological causation, because he says psychological causation is not so valid. The unrelieved anxiety is not so valid, because if the anxiety is relieved, there will be no crime, or there will be no suicide. So what is that reason he wanted to know, which is responsible for the anxieties which remain unrelieved? If those anxieties are relieved, nobody will commit suicide. And then he assumed that it is quite possible that unrelieved anxieties are socially constructed. It is the social factor which is responsible for relieving or unrelieving the anxieties. And therefore he started discovering, and then he went to the field to find out the facts, whether what is there in the family structure which is responsible that in one situation the anxieties are relieved, and in the other situation anxieties are not relieved. And therefore in a situation where anxieties are not relieved, rate of suicide is higher. In the other situation where anxieties are relieved, the rate of suicide is lower. It is lower in the Protestants as compared with it is lower in the Catholic as compared with the Protestants, because they differ in terms of the social cohesiveness, and therefore they also differ in terms of the relieved and unrelieved anxieties, and therefore they differ in terms of the suicide rate. And therefore it is because of this kind of situation he made a breakthrough from a theory and established a different theory, and therefore he gave a different direction to sociology, right? And added new conceptual categories into sociology, social cohesiveness, and also said that said that anxieties, tension, worries are all social constructions, not psychological constructions,
Thank you.
right? Okay.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving very insightful lecture. And we have a in number of comments. Thank you so much, sir.
Oh, only
So,
thank you.
thank you, sir. Indeed, such a pleasure. Okay, sir. Organize many such webinars. Okay, students. We'll organize also. We are going to understand also the questionnaire, the main attributes of questionnaire, introduce method. We'll
And
organize them.
express my thanks also to them
Thank you so
by
much.
saying
And
thanks.
on behalf of sir, also we are grateful that we all joined, and even I can see 13 students are there. You joined 53 and now 13. So thank you. You all are very have great potential in order to be a good researcher. Thank you so much. Okay, bye.
चलिए कम से कम